Do you own your business or does your business own you? A common dilemma of business owners is having a business all consuming of your time, allowing for no time for anything else. This episode addresses this important issue from multiple perspectives.
Our Favorite Tools for Entrepreneurs podcast addresses tools and concepts that are useful for the launch and growth of entrepreneurial ventures. Your two hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Button.
Good morning, Professor Palin. How are you?
Doing well. It's unseasonably warm here. It's beautiful.
We're having a hydraulic event, so 2 weeks of straight rain. It's fantastic. We've come together to cover a topic that I think gets discussed quite a lot at entrepreneurship centers, especially with early stage entrepreneurs, and that is, don't let your business own you.
That's a problem. I see many people fall into that trap. Instead of owning the business ends up owning them.
Oh, absolutely. You see people that have this dream of starting their own business that's going to lead to all sorts of freedoms in their life. And they very quickly paint themselves into a corner in which their 9 to 5 has turned into a 24-hour, always on the demand of the phone job that they've created.
And that goes back to the question I always ask people that are looking, especially first-time startups, are you trying to create a job for yourself or are you trying to create a business? Both of those answers, you can fall into the trap of don't letting the business own you. And there are different dynamics for both of those, but it happens all the time.
It certainly does, especially with first-time entrepreneurs.
One of the keys when you're looking at this is you want to be able to first think of your exit strategy. If the business owns you, then you become too valuable to the business, and your valuation when you're trying to exit devalues the business, and you end up taking a hit because if you leave, if you're the business, you have a problem.
I think you made an important distinction there. You are the business. If that's the case, it's a job. You're creating a role that is a sustaining business inside of that role or entity as you.
If you're starting, especially if you're doing it as a solo and not a team, you are the most important person in business by default. Right. I always advise start by replacing yourself. Replace part of your functions until you are no longer needed. Then it truly is a standalone business.
I like that, having that goal in mind of how quickly can I replace myself.
I always start with what am I bad at? And I try to replace myself there first.
Sure. If your strong points aren't sales or aren't organization or aren't finances, how can you divvy those roles and responsibilities away as quickly as possible?
And with myself, I have so many weaknesses and so many things I can choose from, so it makes it easier for me.
Yeah, certainly. Your career success in education and entrepreneurship definitely is an indicator of that.
But you have to be honest with yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses?
I think you also said a really important thing. If you are the most important thing in the business, right? That statement kind of indicates that there isn't some sort of intellectual property or some sort of first mover's advantage or something that you've created that's the pivotal part of the business that's taking it away from any individual, even if you're replacing yourself, making sure that they then become the business in themselves, that this has its own legs to stand on and carry itself forwards.
This goes back to previous discussions we've had about the value proposition, where you don't want to be the value proposition unto yourself.
Yeah, 100%. It's just occurred to me that if this is something you're trying to set up, that you just want a job, that if you want to become the most important part of the business, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just understanding that that's the reality that you're creating.
That's true. Like, say, for example, someone that's offering services like an attorney or an accountant. Obviously, your input is critical, but you want to, at minimum, be able to plan so that you can take some vacation time.
Yeah. How key is that, right?
So you can create strategic alliances, say, with another accounting firm, or think in terms of how do I bring in other personnel that can handle some of the functions so that it's not 100% of your time. How can I offload some of it, at least in a percentage, as simple as taking a couple of weeks off on vacation?
I'm thinking back to old industries, right? They had apprenticeships. So if you were a blacksmith, I've become recently obsessed with watching blacksmith videos. They would teach the trade to the next person and replace themselves that way. Law firms are another good example of that. They have junior people in the law firm that they're coaching up, teaching how to look at the nuances of law so that when you become partner or whatever role it is in the law firm, you can hopefully take the bigger clients, step aside more frequently, et cetera, et cetera.
So those of our listeners that are watching on video versus just the audio will now understand why your beard is getting so fully developed, because you've been fixating on blacksmiths. I thought it was going to be lumberjacks.
I do my fair share of lumberjacking as well. That's too good. It's the winter beard. I think I'm going to make it a yearly thing.
In overview, though, when someone's saying, well, how do I make myself not as important within the business? I think one of the keys is surrounding yourself with talent. And then I always say, then let them be talented. But you also have to share your vision with them so you can be all moving in the same direction.
Yeah, you have to become that visionary leader, right? You have to get somebody motivated in the same way that you are, or understand their motivations appropriately. That's another big area where replacing yourself becomes difficult, is you got into this understanding exactly what you want to get out of it. So bringing somebody else in, you now have to think, put yourself in their shoes, understand what they want to get out of this business as well.
And you also, assuming you have identified talent and are bringing in talent, you have to give them real responsibility, or they will get frustrated and leave.
Sure. I mean, how many times have I seen that? Holy moly. The new person that's equally as talented, if not more talented, is getting squashed out by the overbearing, micromanaging founder owner that just won't give up.
That micromanaging will allow a rotating door of talent for your firm.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You do see it quite often. I mean, even I've been in those shoes before, starting a business, feeling serious ownership, not physical ownership, but emotional ownership over the business, listening to a call that didn't go well, or an email that I would have said something slightly differently. And it makes you cringe inside, but understanding that there's a dozen ways to get to the final result, and you've got a coach and mentor, and that other person could be more effective, if not just as effective, once you get out of the way of yourself.
The educator in me assumes people are going to make mistakes, and then to identify and explain the error, but also give a contrary, different direction so that you can coach and help people improve, versus the micromanager will just criticize.
Yeah, hopefully I don't criticize. Previous employees and people I've worked with might say something different. But I think I've taken something from the dozens of courses I've taken with you.
My last point on this topic is also the individual has to take their ego out of it and share their knowledge.
Another great point of get out of your own way.
If someone doesn't do that and the business owns them, they're going to be very tired after a few years.
Absolutely. I talk to any young entrepreneur and they'll essentially tell you that story of figuring it out, getting tied to your emails, getting tied to your phone. It becomes 24 hours a day.
Before we part, I've got one quote. I have to throw in a quote.
Let's hear it.
Will Rogers.
Okay. I don't know who that is.
Oh, God goes back into the early part of the centuries. He said, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there.
I like that a lot. Very appropriate.
And now you have to go Google Will Rogers.
There we go. I do.
Well, I appreciate it. Hey, Ryan, have a great day.
Yep, you as well. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to our Favorite Tools for Entrepreneurs podcast. As always, you can head over to ProfSpirit.com to check out more resources and courses designed for you, the entrepreneur. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and others to get the most up-to-date information as it is released.